Plenty of big games as well and helped the Ducks up to a number 2 national ranking. Joining us now, Adaze. He's a reporter for the news team on KGW8 in Portland, Oregon. Joey Harrington joining us here on the show. Joey, good morning.
Good morning. How we doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks so much for joining us. And, looking ahead to this game, Alabama and Clemson, there's so much familiarity between these two coaches and these two teams. So some people say, Alabama-Clemson fatigue. What about you? Are we exhausted this matchup, or is it exciting because they are the two best teams?
If you don't like it, then beat them. I was kind of having that same feeling, like, okay, here we go again. At a certain level, you just got to take your hat off and say, congratulations for congratulate the two coaches for getting their programs there year after year. And football is a game of toughness. Football is a game of, let's just call it king of the hill. And if you want somebody else at the top of the hill, then, strap your pot on and knock them off. And until, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and personally for me, because they've had such great games in the past, those two national championship games, I'm really stoked about it. But other people are saying, we've seen this before. But what do you think? Do we have the potential to have another thriller like we had the 2 years that Deshaun Watson was at Clemson?
Sure, absolutely we do. I don't think that Clemson has the star power at quarterback that Alabama does, which, if we're just jumping straight into it, I think gives Alabama the advantage. I think that, frankly, I think that people are just kind of assuming that Alabama is going to beat Clemson again. And I think that the reason Clemson beat Alabama that year was because of Deshaun Watson. I think if Clemson wins this game, then I think there would be a little bit more, let's just call it post-excitement. But I think if Alabama goes on and wins, like I would guess maybe 3/4 of the country expects them to do, then yeah, I think it's just going to be I don't want to say another ho-hum, but I think it's going to validate that feeling of here we go again.
Joey Harrington joins us ahead of the national championship game here on Sunday Morning Football. What's the secret sauce for Alabama to do this for this long? I mean, Nick Saban's dominance at Bama is pretty ridiculous right now. So how the heck can he be this good and that program be this good year after year after year?
Well, I was lucky enough to play for Nick in Miami when I was with the Dolphins. And there are certain guys, certain coaches who talk the talk. And certain coaches who walk the talk. Nick, more than anybody I have ever met, lives what he talks. It's not just a on the field or in the coaches' offices or in the weight room kind of thing. This is what Nick Saban lives. And as a player, you see it. Now it's not always pretty. And there are plenty of people who may disagree with his methods or may have been put off in the past by the way he's approached things. But there's no arguing that he gets results. And it's because the thing that he would emphasize to us over and over and over is play winning football. Do the right things. And it seems like a pretty benign statement to make. But players see more than I think people give them credit for. Players see when their coaches are letting people get away with things. People see it when coaches are turning a blind eye to something they may not want to deal with. Find me a time where Nick Saban has not stood in front of the camera or stood in front of his team or made a tough decision that people didn't necessarily agree with and owned it. And players respect that. Look, he lives what he preaches. And that is the very foundation for building the type of dominance that we have seen from Nick Saban in Alabama. I don't think, I was going to say a minute ago that he is arguably the greatest football coach in college football history. I don't think that's an argument anymore. I mean, I think he has established himself in the last 10 years. What is he, 11 years at Alabama now? 2007 was his first year. He's established himself as the greatest coach in the history of college football, obviously it's the players, and he will always listen to all his interviews. The first thing he does is say, I'm so happy for these guys. I'm so happy for these players. He will always defer credit and praise to the players, and he will take on responsibility for any mistake. But it's because of him. It's because of the culture that he has established and the way that not only he coaches his team, but he lives his life.
I think you're right about him becoming the greatest of all time. Last year with that championship, I think he surpassed Bear Bryant in my mind as the greatest college football coach of all time. Joey Harrington joins us here on CBS Sports Radio. So that one.
Let me follow up on that. How many coaches would have the guts to pull your starting quarterback in the middle of the national championship game and put a freshman in? If that goes south, if that doesn't work, I mean that is a big-time decision that 99% of college football coaches would not have the guts to do. And Nick said, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I don't care. Forget the consequences. This is the decision I believe in, and that's the type of stuff that he does.
And so many times it's paid dividends. I mean, the SEC title game this year, going back to Jalen Hurts when Tua was out, and Jalen, of course, turned the whole thing on its end, and they end up winning that SEC title game. That one hole in his resume is the pros. You played for him in the pros. Do you think had he stuck it out in Miami that it would have worked?
No, I don't. It's a different animal. It's a different I don't want to say it's a different formula for success, but there's a certain level of control that you need to give up if you're a head coach in the NFL. And I don't know that that fits Nick's personality. I think that now let me say that I was on the practice field and watched him stand there at 5'9" and 158 pounds dripping wet and stand there with his arms crossed and as 300-pound guys are charging at him and screaming. Just watching him hold his ground and stick to what he believes and what he said. But I think that illustrates I want to say the give and take that you need to have in the NFL. Because when you're coaching 18, 19, 20-year-old college kids, they're still young men, right? They still haven't completely struck out on their own. When you're coaching, and I'll never forget this feeling when I walked into the huddle for the first time, and as a 23-year-old rookie in Detroit, and I look across and see my starting left guard just turned 40 years old and takes his kids to soccer practice and the dentist and has to worry about health insurance and their mortgage after practice. That's a different world, right? And so when you're coaching an 18-year-old kid who just moved away from mama's cooking and has somebody else doing his laundry, and you're coaching a guy who's been paying a mortgage just as long as you have, there has to be a little bit of give and take. And I don't know that was necessarily Nick's style.
Tell me about this scene where has his arms crossed at Dolphins practice, and there's 300-pound linemen screaming at him from 5 feet away. What happened?
Just disagreements. I mean, you hear it all the time. The stories that leak out, it's so funny to watch the media make a big example of a fight that happens during practice. There are literally fights, like on the ground, throwing punches at each other's helmets during, I would say, at least one NFL practice every single day. I mean, that's just what happens. It's a game of football. There are emotions that are flying, and it's no different than any other team. But that's just football. And the times that those stories get out, whether it was Antonio Bryant and Ben Roethlisberger getting in an argument, who cares? That's what people don't understand is the NFL is a different ball game. It is different than any other workplace that anybody will ever experience.
So that's interesting. So the actual altercation between Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger, whatever happened, totally fine, happens all the time. My guess is where it breaks convention is Antonio Brown not showing up the next couple of days before what is essentially a must-win game.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Attendance is usually helpful to playing well and winning.
Hey, before I let you go, what do you think about Trevor Lawrence and the job a young freshman has done at quarterback for a team with the national championship aspirations? You know about pressure. You know about rising up the rankings. What's been your thumbnail read on Lawrence's ability this year?
I don't want to say I'm not surprised by freshmen anymore, but because what he has done is tremendous. But do you think Tua would have done that last year? I mean, how many great freshman quarterbacks have we seen in the last, God, do we go back to Johnny Manziel? It just seems like when I was a quarterback at Oregon, I came in 97, and you come in, you expect to redshirt, you expect to sit behind, the junior or senior for a couple of years and then make a run at it. Guys are coming into play now. Guys are coming in more ready than they've ever been. It doesn't take away from. Here's the interesting part. So many guys are physically ready, more physically prepared, more mentally prepared than ever before. But it doesn't take the place of experience. And for Trevor to go in and do the things that he's done this year and take his team to the brink of a national championship is pretty remarkable. But on the other hand, I got to say it doesn't surprise me, because you're seeing more and more freshmen do that now because they're coming in ready to play. They're coming in having watched 10 years of film all the way through middle school and high school and starting weight programs early and, enrolling or, forgetting their senior prom so they can go enroll early in school. I mean, there are countless examples of it around the country. But it doesn't diminish in any way what he has done, taking his team so close to what is an incredibly remarkable season.
Joey Harrington joins us. He is now a member of the news team at KGW 8 in Portland, and also established the Joey Harrington Family Foundation, which is just so cool. You've raised more than $2 million for students across Oregon, and you're looking for leaders. You're looking for leadership, not just in athletics, but also academia and leadership in the community. And that's going to be pretty worthwhile and pretty fulfilling for you to have grown up in that state and that community and find these young people that are doing great things.
I'm really lucky. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm lucky to be able to have spent 8 years in the NFL, and then to be able to come home and have the time to help cultivate the next generation of leaders in the state of Oregon. I mean, I'm born and raised in the state. I went to school here. This is home. And it's just nice to be able to find those students who aren't necessarily 4-point or 1,600 on their SATs, but are involved in the community. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for community leaders, people who have a vision, people who have the guts to stick their neck out there and do something different. And it's a pleasure to be able to help those kind of students day in and day out. So, I'm pretty lucky.
It's pretty awesome. You can check out more information at their website. It's a great website with a lot of information, really just worth your trip on it and to surf around. HarringtonFamilyFoundation.org is the website. Joey, this was a lot of fun, man. I hope we can do it again. This was a lot of great insight. Anytime you have time to chat, we would love to do so.
Always around.